Hey there. Hey, one of the most frequent questions I get from beginners is what paper should I use? It's a big freaking mystery, isn't it? So today I'm putting 4 watercolor paper brands to the test using the same still life reference. Yeah, 4 watercolors in the same demo. Holy crap, this might take a hot minute. Hey, I'm Rusty Nelson, your college art professor, and I do get a lot of questions concerning the best paper to use when watercoloring, and my opinion about using student grade paper while learning the fundamentals. It does generate a lot of pushback. My opinion is based on my experience working with students in class who have a very limited budget for supplies and a range of papers that they bring to class. I have to teach watercolor using a wide range of papers. And I do know for a fact that it doesn't hurt to have flexibility with your watercolor technique to adapt to whatever paper you have available. So that's going to be the experiment. I have Canson, Grumbacher, Strathmore, and Arch papers prepped with the same composition of lemons casting a shadow. And I'll use the same brush and pigments on each still life. And along the way, I'll point out how the paper handles the washes, edges, color saturation, and lifting. And hopefully you can see the difference as we go. And at the end of the video, we'll compare the finished painting side by side to see how the paper reacts to my watercolor technique. We'll just see how they look. All right, I have the setup here. I have a Grumbacher paper, a Canson paper, Strathmore, and Arch paper. These 3 are essentially student grade. You're going to get these for anywhere from $12 to $15, depending upon the size you're working with. Whether they're spiral bound or just glued in, it might be a block as well, but roughly in that price range. 9 by 12, 11 by 14, it just depends. So they're not terribly expensive. You typically get anywhere from 20 to 50 sheets. I think with this, for that price, you get about 50 sheets and you might get about 20 for these. So you can kind of do the math and see that this is a cheaper grade of paper, the Canson is. So I see a lot of this from students when they bring these blocks and these pads into class. I do see more Strathmore than Grumbacher, and every now and then we have students that'll bring in some Arch paper as well. So this is the professional grade 300-pound watercolor paper. This dries very quick. These hold the moisture longer, so you can get more wet on wet techniques accomplished with these. You really have to be Johnny on the spot with the Canson paper. So that's the paper. I have my small pan set. And I have essentially 5 brushes here, a couple of flats. They're both 3/4 inch flats, and a series of rounds. And I have my mop here to work with. I'll be doing all these concurrently. I'll do all the steps and stages at the same time on each one of these pieces, and we'll just react to how this paper works with the techniques. So I'm doing the 3 stages, where you're starting out color blocking, big rough colors, and knocking out all the white on the paper. We'll move into finding big shapes and adding saturation and a little structure in stage 2. Stage 3, we'll be dropping in all the contrast, structure, and detail. And we'll also be working with the 4 states of watercolor: the wet on wet, wet on dry, dry on wet, and dry on dry at the various stages. So hopefully I'll try to keep this as consistent as possible on each one of them, so we can definitely get the effect and see what each one looks like at the end of the session. So let's get going. All right, so we are going to get started first by mixing up. If we're looking at the reference there, the background, it's a neutral background, nice white background, but it has a pinkish color cast to it. So I am just going to mix up a very thin mixture of these reds right here. All right, it's not going to be a lot, and I might just throw a smidge of yellow into it like that. All right, and this is very thin. This is like a very weak tea color. And we're going to work with a quick wet on dry. We're going to block around the yellow fruit right here, the lemons on each one, and we'll just start out there and we'll just see how this goes. There's not a lot of work to do in the background. We just need to kind of get an interesting application of the color in the backgrounds, and we'll just start right like that. So with this one, you can see right away, that's a pretty intense red. It will dry lighter, so I'm just going to come in. Just going to block around as fast as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm working with kind of a live edge here. Work with as big a brush as possible. All right, cool. There might be just a little more. I'm just going to unload my color, get a little more of a color variation, come up and around right there, right over here. There we go. So there's the wash on the background on the Grumbacher. And I'm going to just put a little smidge of it right here, a little more than that. There we go. I'll throw a little bit right there on each one of these, right on that crescent shape. Then I'm just going to feather it out. All right. So like I said, 4 different watercolors all at once. This should be an entertaining experiment. So, all right, Canson paper. Holy crap, you can't hardly see any textures on this. And it kind of has a little cloudier effect, the washes. You got to keep moving and continue your application. If you stop and wait too long, you're going to have kind of spots where the color will, the edges will show from one application to the next. So right there, I think we did a pretty good job there. All right, let's get our next one. This is the Strathmore. So it's got a nice feel to it. It has a little more, I think, grab to the pigment as I lay it down. I feel like I can spend a little more time pushing the paint around, more so than on the Canson. All right, so, and it does a nice dry brush right there. So I'm really doing a wet on dry. And if I wanted to, I can see how I could unload my brush. Here, I'll just unload it real quick. And we could get, hopefully, some nice dry brush action happening here. All right, so we have some interactions here looking similar. And that's okay. I'm going to grab just a little more pigment on this last one. Get a little yellow. There we go. All right. And this is the good stuff here. So this is the arch. And it really does have a lovely tooth to it when you apply it. So I know I tell people that, you know, when you're first learning your watercolor fundamentals, it's okay to do it on student grade paper. And I have gotten some people who don't necessarily agree with that. You should always buy the best paper and work with it. But like I said, I've had to work with so many student grade papers over the years up at the university with my students that I feel like I've got a broader ability with my technique. So the paper is irrelevant if you understand your techniques and then just how those techniques interact on whatever paper. And you're just really kind of learning how to do it on the fly. Oh, I forgot to do my other little, let me add those in. I'll put them right in here on this one, right in here on this one, right here on this one, right here down here on that. We just need a little bit of that peak, that red right in that core of the shadow on each one. And it's probably not even dense enough with what I just did. All right. So there we go. That's kind of how each one of these initial washes starting to work. This one's getting a bloom on it. I see a bloom happening here. I introduced something wetter onto a wet area, and that's where you start getting the blooms. I'm getting a bloom on the Grumbacher, and surprisingly, I'm getting a small bloom over here on the Canson as well. So they're pretty sensitive to that difference from something wetter going into something dry, and you get a bigger spread. So this looks a little more forgiving, has a little more of an even tone overall. So, all right, so I just need to let these things dry for a few minutes, and then we can come in and we'll do the color blocking on the lemons and probably get some of that color happening into the shadows as well. And then we can jump into stage 3. All right, so I cleaned off my palette. I'm going to start out and we're going to just get a nice puddle of nice saturated yellow here. And we're going to block in and drop in the color, that local color for the lemon. And each lemon, there's going to be a highlight right on these spots. I got it lightly highlighted, but depending upon each one of these, we'll see how we handle that. And there's a texture in the highlights that we might be able to get with dry brush, but I do have a pretty loose mixture of lemon going on here. So, all right, so let's see if we can somehow do this. And I'm trying to decide, maybe, I think, before I commit, I might jump over and use my mop, my little mop here instead. All right. I'm going to unload it. I'm going to load it back up with pigment now. So maybe that might give me, these aren't huge paintings, so let's just come in and we'll just kind of block in. We don't have to get too overly concerned with being real terribly fussy with it. All right, so I'm just going to kind of come in and, uh-oh, I got a hair dropped off onto my thing. I'm actually going to pull that on out into the shadow area as well. And I'm looking here, it's not really reactivating the pink to any great extent, so that's okay. I'm going to just kind of make it a little looser. I'm just going to drop it in like that. All right, I don't want to fuss around too much. So if I fuss around too much, we're going to be here all day. All right, so let's pull this in there. Same drill up here. We'll just kind of hopefully get some sense of a highlight right there. Pull this on around. Pull this into this one. You can definitely get a nice sense of the translucency of the watercolor with what I'm doing right now. All right. All right, cool. I don't think I might just throw just a hint of some yellow out into the background here as well. I mean, after all, water or the color is fugitive. It'll go everywhere. All right, let's get another little dab of yellow, freshen up my puddle. Let's go after the Hansen. So that was just the Grumbacher we just did. So same drill here. Just drop it out here. We can do this really quick. All right, cool. There's one. All right, here's two. Get that highlight in roughly the same spot. All right, I need a little more pigment. There we go. Just yellow, straight yellow from the pan. We're just blocking in the colors. The only place we're going to have some white showing is in those highlights. Throw it into the shadow there. Cool, that looks good. Get a little more yellow again. All right, down here on this one. Actually, I think the Strathmore feels more like the Canson. It seems to be a little bit a better grade than the Canson. The Grumbacher definitely has a crazy tooth to it, but it isn't terribly. It's not as absorbent as the Arche. All right, let's get these blocked in. There we go. I have some serious yellow in that shadow there. All right, we'll try to protect that little highlight right there. There we go. Pull it down, get into this one. There we go. A little more pigment. All right, so Oh, and that's another thing. I need to go back over to my Canson. Hopefully it'll forgive me for ignoring that. All right, so now I'm going to just unload. I'm just going to kind of, again, drop in some of that yellow into the negative space, and you can see it does not absorb as well as the Rumbacher did, so I'm going to have to feather it a little bit for the effect that I want. Cool. There we go. And now let's do it over here. Throw a little bit out here. Like I said, that color is fugitive, so it's going to flow everywhere. We'll maybe even throw a little hint halo right there, right there. Did I throw any up here? I didn't on that one. Here, we'll throw a little dab up here. There we go. All right, so cool. Throw that there. And our last little okay. Oh, I am gonna lose my highlight right there. Damn it! I got too excited. All right, we'll just move it over a little bit. There we go. We'll just embrace the horror. Consider it a happy accident. All right, let's get this one. All right, there we go. Coming around. All right, cool, 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 cool. And actually, this one still had some moisture I could feel in the paper when we started this session. All right, so get that highlight over here again. All right. If I was using my flat, I'd probably go after more of a dry brush. All right, so I'm going to just throw that out there. I think the color is looking a lot more perkier on the Arch paper. So just throwing it out there. All right, just let that color move around a little bit. That should be fun. There we go. All right, so we have color blocked. This is the end of stage 1. With that, we put a little color into the background. Everything's kind of drying at this point. So we're going to start in, and it's okay at this point. I do want to get some oranges into this, all right? So I'm going to mix up a puddle of some oranges, and we're going to lay in that crescent color on each one of the forms. All right, so we have some serious horseshoe colors right down in through here. Comes right across almost to the point right there. So we'll just throw that in there. I think it feels like it's still pretty wet. We should be able to keep some nice fuzzy edges here. And then there's a nice orange right down in through here. All right, let's get this one. And it comes in probably about right to here. And then it gets orange right down here by the shadow. Comes around, comes up. Maybe it comes over this way. All right, so that's pretty dry right there. So I'm just going to feather it right there. All right, we'll just pull it around. Throw it down there. This one is fairly orange in the shadow. So I'm going to block in quite a bit of that. There we go. All right, and then this one here, it's really right along this little shape there, and then right along the base. Comes round along here and right up to the little spot right there. And I'm even going to come in, I'm going to throw it into the shadow right down here. All right, same drill. Now this is the Canson paper. So again, try to do the same thing. Pull it over. I want that that orange comes right over right over to here, but it's lighter right there. We'll throw it into the underneath side, into the shadow. That's going to be a pretty dark shadow. So let me throw that in. There we go. And it needs to have some good saturation to it. All right. So it's a pretty sharp edge. That had dried. That does dry pretty quick. All right. So pull it over here. This shadow has a lot of orange in it. All right. And last but not least, we'll do this one. And down here. There we go. Now I am going to come in. This paper is going to, I want a softer edge right here. I'm going to feather that out a little bit on this one and over here on this one as well. And right up here. Just create a little more of a transition. And same thing here. Now on papers that are harder to feather, I'll do a lot of this just adding paper in and softening edges. So something that might happen more so with a wet on wet technique, you can just come back in. And that is the one nice thing about the Canson. It does reactivate nicely, so you can push that stuff around. All right, so let's get this one. All right, so we'll add that little right there. Comes around right to there, comes across better, right in through here. This side's orange. Again, I'm going to add that deep orange out here into the shadow. And this one right here comes in right across the way, right up there. Didn't get this one. This is a good thing to do just to practice and understand what each paper does. So you're keeping your elements of your experiment consistent, and so you can observe what the variables are when you are applying your technique to each one of these papers. All right, so it's a good knowledge base kind of experiment. You're building a vocabulary. I'm softening again. All right, cool. Right like that. That could be a little softer right here. See, you can come back in. You can still manipulate. Just don't overwork your paper. These cheaper papers they vary in how durable they are. I know for a fact that Canson, you'll start pilling and really affecting the quality of the paper surface pretty easily. Once it gets wet, it gets pretty delicate. And our better stuff like the Arch, it's a lot more forgiving, and you can do a lot of scrubbing with it. So I'm going to throw that in there and we'll get this shape. So I did have a little of that pink. Remember on our initial blocking, we had some, that Arch is really dried. So, all right, now I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to scrub in because I know that Arch has a lovely texture to it. So a little dry brush action is going to kind of work nicely here and help us to develop some textures. I'm looking here. What's it going to be? That's going to be pretty orange right there. Let's get this one. All right, so we're going to grab that. Look at that. Yeah. So this is where the power of the Arch really comes in, is that texture, that dry brush crunch that you're getting there. And you can then come in and soften it out a little bit if it's too crunchy. We'll just soften it out over here. Let's get it into the shadow down here. We'll define that bottom edge nicely with a lot of pigment. And that top edge of this one with that orange. Pull it down and around. Cool. That's looking nice. And let's see here. We got this one. Let's get this one. It wasn't quite that straight. I'll feather it out a little bit. There it is. It's going to get a little more crunch to it. Okay. Cool. Really saturated right over here on this side. We'll get the bottom edge. All right. So that is doing nicely. We'll feather that out right there a little more. All right. So there we go. We have just started getting some nice form and values happening there. Pushing things around a little bit. All right. And I see just a smidge. I'm going to throw it in over here. I'm going to make a puddle over here, kind of a yellow-green. I'm going to keep it very thin though, all right? I'm kind of seeing a bit of it. I'm just going to throw a bit of it up here on this, right up here, right on that top edge right up there. And actually it's kind of more so on this one, about right in here. There we go. Do it over here. Same drill. Oh boy, that took the pigment quite. Like I said, you can see it sat right there on the surface where it soaked in better on this one. All right, we'll do the same thing on this over here. And on this, right in through here. We got just a bit of green on that lemon. Let's do it right here on this one. All right, right up here, and over here. And right there on this one. There we go. These two act very similar. There we go. And last but not least, let's see what it does on our arch. All right. Throw that right up here. That feels pretty nice. Something was wet. I just felt it. I'm going to put that right up against that highlight right there. Actually, that little nib has a pretty good green to it. Cool. All right, now let's get this one. And I'd say it's happening most strongly right there on this edge. All right, now that's fun. And I am going to come in. I'm going to mix in some phthalo blue now. All right. We're going to come after some of that core of that shadow. I'm going to throw a little bit of burnt sienna in it, a little more orange. All right. So we have a brownish, greenish orange right there. All right. A little more orange. There we go. So there we go. We're going to come in for shadows and the core of the shadow on this lemon right in through here. So I think it needs to be more orange, a more red. Damn it. There we go. Good. There we go. There we go. And we'll just do that. There we go. And I'm going to come in underneath here and define the edge of that lemon right there. Cool. All right, now that needs to be feathered out. It is way too sharp. So I'm just going to soften it out a little bit. Try to get some textures. Okay. Right down there. All right, now let's go back. I'm going to get some of that dark color and we're going to block in the rest of that shadow in this dark color. Get a better green, a little more of that green, maybe a little viridian in there. Holy cow. There we go. All right, cool. And we'll feather it out. There we go. Maybe just a soft fuzz on that. That's looking good. All right, these shadows are becoming problematic. I'm gonna get a more orange. All right, little more saturation contrast is what we're doing here. So I'm gonna get the bottom edge of that orange or that lemon. All right, I'll pull it over here a little more. All right, we're gonna feather this out just a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to soften it up on this side. There we go. And again, this is fairly orange, but it does start transitioning into more of a burnt sienna. So I'm going to throw that right underneath to find that bottom edge. All right, and I'm going to throw a little more of the green right here. Okay, do that here, do that there. I need to pick up the tempo. Let's do this one. All right, right in through here. And we're going to go after that green right here. There we go. All right, I'm going to start speeding this up. I'm going to stop fussing around so much. And we'll just go after it. There we go. How's this looking? There we go. There's a little more green right in through the core right there. All right, so let's do this one. All right, so we're getting some of that dark orange. We'll come right in through here and throw it right down here on the bottom edge. And go green right in here. All right. All right, I got to soften this up a little bit. I can see right now I will need to do some glazing on the Canson. There we go. And the colors just aren't as vibrant with it. So that's just something to take note of as you're working with it, that it just doesn't have the vibrancy. We'll throw this out over here like this. There we go. There we go. All right. And again, the good thing about it is it does reactivate nicely on the paper. Let me get this one. Okay. Just throw that down. Let's get a little more orange in that. Okay. Right there and right in through here. There we go. All right, and then this is just dark as hell over here. Throw some of that green right down there. We'll lose the edge on that one. And then we'll feather this out. Feather it out that way as well. All right, there we go. All right, here we go. One more time, actually 2 more times yet. This is stage 2. We're definitely working in finding shapes, creating form, definition, saturation, doing all those fun things. All right, I'm going to throw some of that orange on this one. There we go. Comes right around down here on the bottom, right there. Comes in maybe about right in there like that. Cool. All right, let me get that orange. We'll get it on this one. There we go, right there, right there. Cool. Uh-oh, I just dropped my brush. There we go. All right. This also, I guess doing 4 at a time, it's definitely forcing me to not be fussy. And it's making me work faster. All right, so I'm going to come in. We're going to define this bottom edge with this darker green. Let's get some more of that viridian in that, a little more phthalo, a little more of that burnt umber, or that's burnt sienna, a little more orange. There we go. Now we can cook. There we go. That is an intense green. All right. Okay, there's that. I'm going to try to blend those two a little bit. Let's get a little more orange in that. There we go. That's looking pretty cool. I'm just going to fuss around right here like that, just real quick, right up underneath it. Right up underneath it, right there. All right, we can add structure in a minute. All right, let's come back here. I'm going to get a little more of the green right in through here and a little more right in through here. And this one right here has a ton of green in the shadow. Okay, let's feather that out. There we go. Feather this out, pull it over there. There we go. Making irregular marks, and then I'm going to throw just a bit of a muddier orange right over here. Right up here. We'll just define that edge a little better. All right, and then we'll just feather that out a little bit. Trying to do the same thing on each one. All right, so there's that. How's those looking? Oh, I forgot the green on this one. Let's get a little more of that right in here. All right. Irregular marks. Make that read. All right, now let's go to our, what do I want? I want the a little more saturated orange. There we go. All right, and we'll go after it right in through here. All right. Get it right up here on this. All right, that looks good. We'll feather that out. All right, I'm going to throw it really right down here, right up to here. Find that bottom edge, that shadow right there, and then I'm going to go after the green. There we go. That's looking good. All right, now, same drill over here. Get that shape going. It's heavier over here. Cool. I'm just going to feather that just a little bit. All right, and again, we're going to intensify the orange right under the fruit. There we go, and I'm going to throw that green right here on the corner of the shadow and right here on the corner of the shadow. And we'll meld the two together. All right, now one more. Get this shape right in through here. Right up here. Cool. Right down there. And then we do have, let me get that viridian and that phthalo blue, a little more of that burnt sienna. And we'll throw that into the shadow under the lemon. Okay. Feather it a little bit. All right, and I'm going to feather this just a smidge more. Let that all just kind of create some textures. All right, so there we go. That is essentially stage 2, and now we are going to then come in with stage 3, and we're going to start doing definition, some line work, edge work, texture work, and it all comes together on each one. So let's let this dry for a few minutes, and we'll jump on it in just a second. All right, so the pieces have all dried, and we can really now come in and start working with our detail brushes. So I'm going to work with my number 3 and number 1 brush, and we're going to start building some structure and contrast and detail onto the 4 different watercolors. So I'm going to mix up first some really dark. I want to get some burnt umber and some burnt sienna and some ultramarine. We'll mix up a fairly thick mixture. Again, kind of a coffee to milk into the cream states of consistency. All right, and I've even come in and just really kind of hit some of the drawings with a kneaded eraser just to get rid of some of the pencil lines. The blue line that I have kind of sketched up everything on, just to get rid of it. And amazingly, it does pick up and remove underneath. Even though it's underneath the color, it will lift and erase. So there we go. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to use some of this dark greenish brown color, and I'm just going to hit some of the really densest spots all the way around. So we're just going to add in some of this structure and contrast and detail and do a little drawing here, and we'll just build out all of the fun stuff here. All right, cool. And that's on the dark end of the spectrum over here. I'm just going to put a little more in here. I'm going to have my bigger brush ready to go, and I'm just going to feather some of that out, right like that. It's that nice structure. And then I'm also going to mix up, I'm going to get some of this orangish yellow right over here. All right, and it's going to be thicker and darker. All right, I'm still using my number 1 brush. All right, and on the top side, I'm going to do just a little structure work with orange. All right, so we'll just do a little of that work right there. Broken edges, just a little structure. If it's too tight, I'm going to just come in and I'll just loosen it up a little bit. We just want a little more contrast, defining the edge of the orange. Maybe you can pull it in a little more. Right up there. There we go. Again, the Grumbacher does have a nice tooth to it. I will give it that. So, all right, we'll do the same thing over here on this side. Just going to structure it out. Put a little detail on it. And since I have 4 of these, I am working pretty quick. And I'm not going to spend as much time being as fussy as I normally would on this. So we're going to get a little more color contrast going there. I'm going to feather it out over here. There we go. All right. Let me get this side. Get it right up to that, right over here. And then we'll bend it around. Cool. And there we go. Got a little of the orange right there. We'll do the same thing over on the other side, but now I'm going to get my greenish color. I'm going to really hit this lower end over here. All right. I'm just going to pop a little bit of it in there. This little spot has a little green to it. And then this whole thing gets a lot greener, especially right down here. Let's get some of that orange again. We'll just throw it right in there. All right, so we're getting some nice contrast happening. There we go. This, I'm going to get a little more orange and yellow. Oh, shoot. So, hang on, I got to fix my problem. I missed my palette. There we go. There we go. I just rescued it. Slight problems. Oh my gosh, everything's falling apart on me. There we go. All right, that's what I wanted. I want to get this right here. I want to intensify that yellow and orange. Actually, I want to do it right in here as well. This is a nice glaze. All right. And I want to throw a nice glaze, a little more an orange right in through here. All right. Perfect. And I'm going to come back to my green. And I'm going to hit this edge just right under here. It's probably going to feather. There's quite a bit of moisture right there. We'll just do that. There we go. And we'll hit this right up here. There. And we'll hit it right up here. All right. Feather it out just a little bit. Just softening it out. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to get a little red over here. Move that green. I'm going to hit the core, this shadow. Just real quick. Just a quick scrub, dry brush. So that's a dry on dry. I'm going to hit it right over here as well. There we go. And right down here, right in through here. So taking advantage of the dense, or I'm sorry, the textures in that paper. All right, so let me look here. It's not showing up on screen as dense as I want, so I'm going to grab my smaller brush, this darker green, and we'll just throw a little more in it. There we go. Cool. And it's looking a little better. And right down here. Okay. So let's go and get just a little darker right down here. All right, now let's do the next one. Do the same thing, and this is the Canson paper. We got a thick, deep, rich, greenish color here. Okay, we'll go ahead and pull that out. I'm going to throw more orange into it. We're just kicking up the contrast range, the density. I'll come over, I'm going to draw a little bit here. Get a little structural work happening right here. Get that orange. We'll come around on the top side and we'll just add that orange line in. All right, we're just going to structure it up a little bit. Okay, I want to feather that out a little bit right up here. And it definitely dries very quickly. Just need a little more structure up there. All right, and I'm gonna grab my dark color, get a little more mixture there. Come on under this side, come around. All right, grab my burnt umber, get a little more phthalo, really dark color. Add a little more structure. All right, and then a little bit of it right up here. Okay. Feather that out a little bit. Come right up underneath over here. Actually, I'm going to make a little more orange, dark orange. All right, right along under here. There we go. We'll feather that out a little bit. Again, you got to have a soft hand when working with this Canson paper. I'm going to get that dark orange, a little more orange-ish. Come up here. I'm going to grab this edge right up here. Just a little definition on that side as well. Feather it out. There it is. All right, so we're getting there. We'll get this one right here. And right around over here. Just about had a disaster with that one, didn't I? Good. So feather that out. I'm just adding definition. Just a little more structure on that edge. And I'm going to put a little more darkness. Oh, can't do that. It's going to feather out. Sorry. We'll just pull it up. There we go. We'll just let that dry and we'll come back to that. All right, let's get that dark orange again. We're going to go for the core of that shadow. Right in through here. Just get a little more contrast in it. All right, there's that. We'll throw a little more of it right in through here. Good. We'll throw just a bit of it up here as well. Unload my brush. And we'll feather that out just a little bit. Doesn't have the texture as the Grumbacher did. All right, and we'll throw a little more of it down here, a little more of that orange. Get that in there. There we go. All right, we'll let that dry for a second. Oops. And we'll get this again. And get a little of this darker color. All right, we're going to get that core of the shadow that comes right in through here. All right, we'll get it right here as well. That was a bold swash. I need to lighten that up. I'm going to need to feather that out a little bit. There we go. Right, like that. Perfect. And we'll get it right down here. Still pretty wet, so it's going to feather right down through here. All right. And I'm going to get my flat brush real quick. I'm introducing another brush. This is a little 1/2 inch flat. And I'm just going to pick a little removal of pigment right there on that fuzzy edge. Just lighten that up. And we can even come in and model some of that right there with this brush. We'll just model some of that textures. I'm not going to do it on this one, mainly because the paper gave me a nice texture to work with. That nice crunchy There we go. All right, so that one's looking pretty good. Back over my big round. Let me get my small brush. Let's get the phthalo again. That orange again. Nice thick mixture. Let's go this one. Just come in right like that. Pull it out. Pull it down around. I'm going to feather it out just a little bit. It is very dark. I need to actually put more of the dark right down here. All right, and let's throw some of that orange again right in here, and we'll model the two together. Perfect. All right, so that's got some nice contrast. And let's do the same thing on this one. Nice and dense colors, that greenish brown. Throw a little more orange in it. Cool. Get a little more of it again. Burnt sienna, raw umber, phthalo blue. All right, now I'm going to draw a little contrast right along this edge. There we go. We'll throw it right down there along here, like that. Grab that orange. That is predominantly an orangish color there. Let me get more orange going. Looks like I need to get more orange in my palette. All right, so we just defined that corner a little better. Okay. There we go. All right, and I'm going to get that dark orange again. And we're going to hit it. Oops, I just stuck my finger in a wet spot. And define and add a little structure there. Again, this feels very much like the Canson. And this is the Strathmore. I'm going to just pop in a little more contrast. Right like that. And I'm going to throw a little bit of it up here. And up here. I missed it over here. And let me get that dark orange. Add a little structural edge over here. I got something going on right up there. There we go. Throw that little spot right there. Back to my orange. There we go. And I'll throw the little of that orange on this edge. And a little structural work again. I'm doing a little outlining, but it's a broken line. I'm trying to keep it with some character. I don't want it to read solely outlined there. And I'm going to feather on this one side of that line. I want it sharp on one edge and fuzzy on the other. Okay, cool. That's looking pretty good. I got one spot. Actually, I got a couple of spots. Again, we'll see how this works. Since this reminds me a lot of the Canson paper up here, I've got a 1/8 inch flat brush, and I'm going to pick that highlight back out. That I have a boo-boo there, and I got a little boo-boo there, and it lifted nicely. So this paper really does a nice job on letting me take pigment off of it. Let's see what it does with this little spot up here. Little blue. I'm not sure if that might have been some blue line. I'm just going to soften that up and feather it out a little bit. It's going to have a little bit of a remnant there, but I think it'll be all right. All right, back to my mini brush. And I'm just going to hit some spots. Punch up the contrast a bit on this one. I want to round this off just a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to throw a little bit of it right in through here, just like the other ones. All right. How's that looking? Looking pretty good. All right. How's that? All right. Now, let's go over. We're going to be working on the arch paper. I'm going to get me a thicker brush again. And I'm going to come after this shape here, right along this underneath side. Okay. Okay, and now I'm going to unload my brush and we're going to feather it out. All right, how's that look? It's pretty green right down here. Let's get a little more density happening. Here we go. It actually comes up more about right in here. See more orange over in this area. So we'll see if we can keep that going. Softening it out, feathering it all together. There we go. And adding a little more structure to it. There it is. All right, so there's that. Throw a little more in. Cool, and I'm going to do the same thing over here on this edge. Pretty dark green shadow over here. I don't see so much of an orange in this one. So nice, solid, dense, contrasting color right there. And I'm going to throw some of this really dark orange, a little more of that green in it. And I'm going to throw it right up here on this shadow and this underneath side, coming around. We'll bring it down this way. There it is. We'll throw that little spot right there, right there. Make sure I get it on each one of them. Okay. And we'll just feather that off. I just want a little stronger separation from the lemon. Okay. And I'm going to get some more of this orange. Throw that right there on it. Intensify that orange. All right, now that work is done. I grab my thicker color again. All right, burnt umber, phthalo blue, dense and thick, and we're going to do a little edge work. All right, so we'll just throw in and start building out our edge of this lemon, interacting there, coming off of there, there. Do the same thing over here. That's a fairly dark shape right there. And right over here. That's fun. And that's fun. I'm going to feather it just a little bit. There we go. What's that little hint of green there? All right, back to my orange again. Do the same thing over here. Let's see if we can get, uh-oh, I just stuck my hand in it, made a boo-boo. All right, here we go. Get a little more structure on that side of the lemon. And right up here, I love this crunchy area right above that I achieved right when I did the initial color wash. That looks pretty cool. I'm going to feather this out. Good. Bob up my drop. There it is. All right. And we'll do the same thing over here. Pull that down. That's nice. Feather it out just a little bit. That looks good. And I'm going to pull it on out this direction. And I'm going to pull it out from the shadow this direction a little ways. All right. That is working. And there's a nice, actually a pretty good shadow color right there. All right. Cool. All right, so that's some pretty good structure work. Keep sticking my hand in a wet spot. I'll throw that right there. I do like what that just did. All right, now we're going to get some of this intense orange. I can get a little more intense. There it is. I'm going to get my bigger brush, textural qualities to this right in through here. And maybe just a smidge right up here. Let's soften it up, loosen it up. There we go. And there we go. Let's do it again over here. I'm looking. There we go. Right in through here. And we'll get more orange. Yeah, I'm running out of orange. All right, let's throw a little bit more of it down. There we go. There we go. Right in like that. And right in through here. And scuff that up a little bit. And then let's hit it with some of this darker greenish orange. And it's going to happen right in through here. In irregular marks just to get a sense of texture. And we're going to throw it right up here. Right in through here, this core right through here. Feather it out, loosen it up. Try to make it textural as well. And one more time, right in through here. All right, so we have painted all of these. We did protect the highlights pretty good, so they're showing up. And I have a couple of boo-boos. I'm going to just come in. I'm just going to loosen this up right here. And I'll just daub it. There it is. Got a couple splatters over here that I made. We can just loosen that up a little bit and dab it up. There it is. All right. So again, I've given you a little bit of a fixing tutorial right there as well. A little more of this dark color. All right. And if we want, here, let's do this. Everything's dry, fairly dry. I can feel a little wet spot up there still. This feels dry. This feels dry. And I'm going to clean out that spot right there. I want to get my flat brush here, get some yellow, get some solid orange. All right, so there's a good orange right there. And it's probably about a tea-ish approaching coffee. And I'm just going to simply put a glaze in here. All right, and I'll drop it, a little bit of it right here as well. And even over here, down around like this, right up against that highlight right there. Now that's pretty sharp. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to get a flat brush. I'm just going to soften this out. Right like that. There we go. Soften that out. Soften that out. There we go. Perfect. So we just popped a little more saturated color as a glaze in here. And frankly, this right here, I'm going to get a solid yellow. The Canson looks very pale, so it needs a good solid glaze. So I've done the same thing over here. You can't see it on screen. I got my back lid, and I'm just going to glaze an overall yellow on this whole thing and just punch that yellow up a little more, protecting that highlight right there. So I want the yellow a little more intense, a little more right up over here, right there. That helps. There we go. That helps immensely. And I think even this Strathmore would benefit from a little more of a yellow glaze. So we'll just throw a little more yellow. Quick layer of saturated intense yellow just to make it sing a little stronger. Okay. All right, cool. And oh hell, while we're doing it, let's just do it all the way around. Get some good yellow again. I've done it here. Did I do it here? Let's throw a little more right there. Let's throw a little more right up here. Right down there. Right there. And right in through here. So that little more saturation is going to make those highlights pop. Let's grab it. We'll throw it right on this one as well. There we go. Throw it right on through there. There we go. Excellent. That looks pretty cool. And that's all nice and drying. What we could do, as it's kind of damp, actually I need to glaze a little more orange as well. Let me come back to my orange. Okay, let's get that nice, thick, saturated, bright orange. And I just want to just put a dab of it. Let's see, these look pretty good. Those look pretty good. This looks a little pale. So we'll just come in, throw a little more yellow, orange in there. There we go. Throw a little more right there on that one. This one as well, down here. All right, and let's throw it right in on this terminus edge. That's looking pretty good. And right down here. And right up over here. Right there, right there, right there. There we go. All right. And just for some more, I'm going to throw a little more of it on this one. Right in here. Maybe right in through here. So I'm just bouncing around, and now I'm just kind of tweaking out my saturation balance on everything. I'll have to fix that. All right, cool. Let's do this one right here. All right, so that's all looking good. And our last little effort we're going to do as I fix some of my problems. Cool. Is to splatter in maybe some textures. All right, so I'm going to get my medium size round. I'll load it up with some orange. Make sure it's a good saturated orange. Okay, so let's just start from the top. All right, so we can drop in just some nice textures. It's very wet, so they're going to spread. All right, so that's good. I like that. Throw them over here. So everything's wet. We're going to have a lot of wet splatters, but they'll do the job. Somebody wanted to know how to splatter, so I use this technique quite a bit when I'm splattering. Also, you can get a toothbrush if you want a lot of fine textures. You can use a toothbrush, and you can just simply work with a range of colors too. So let's get just a little darker orange, and we can put those down into it as well, just for some visual textures. You got to know when to stop. Have I reached that point? Maybe. All right, so there we go. Throw some more down on this one. There we go. There we go. 4 different paintings of 3 lemons. Get a little red. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to make this look like it's intentional. How about that? Little intense pink. All right. Here, let's throw some up here too. There we go. All right. So I think we have achieved our goals here. I would spend probably a lot more time on one, just fussing with some of the structure and the details, but there we go. All right, so let's just take a look at each one of these. So with our Grumbacher here, it has a good tooth and good texture. It stays wet nicely, so you're able to get some nice wet on wet color interactions when the color is coming on. This dries very quickly. It doesn't have as nice a color interaction wet on wet. It's just doing so much so fast. So you just have to work fairly quick with it. But the nice thing is you can also do a lot of nice picking. So if you wanted to ramp up your textures or even pick out a hotter highlight in spots, I think the Canson lifts nicely. And the Strathmore feels like and functions a lot like the Canson. It doesn't have as nearly as much tooth as the Grumbacher. And of course, you got your professional grade Arches here. It's still very wet right now. There's nothing I could do with this. There's a little more structural work I would like to do with this. Get some really beautiful crunchy edges when you do your dry brush. You get some nice soft color interactions and textures and nice gradients with your Arches paper. All right, there we go. Our 4 little watercolors of lemons. So what did we learn from this little experiment? Well, mainly all the papers can certainly produce a watercolor painting, but they all behave very differently. So the student papers tend to absorb the water faster. The Grumbacher, it looks like, has a nice tooth to it, more so than the Canson or the Strathmore. And it has more of a texture similar to the Arches, but it just doesn't take the paint quite as smoothly as the Arches paper. So anyway, that's kind of the takeaway on this. If I had a little more time, I would address these out a little further, add a little more nuance to everything, but you know, four watercolors in an hour, it's not doing too bad. For beginners, this is important to know. So get out some various papers, do the same composition on each one of the papers and look for and see and understand what each paper does and what it offers for technique. This is a challenge, so give it a try. I think you'll like it, and it's going to build your visual vocabulary immensely. So, all right, guys, the good news is you can still learn and practice on student paper. You're going to learn some things that you'll be able to translate and put onto the good paper when you get to the point you want to start working on better paper. So take a deep breath, practice this stuff, understand what the paper does with your technique, and you'll be miles ahead. So, hey, if you found this video helpful, please give me a like and a subscribe. You don't want to miss any of the future demos and stuff. I'm working on them, getting more out there all the time. So share this out with any friends, relatives, or neighbors you know who'd be interested in learning how to watercolor. Send them to the channel. I have free links and resources in the video description. So if you're interested in figure drawing, face drawing, and there's some watercolor stuff out there as well, head over to my website and download that stuff. That'll keep you busy and entertained for quite a while. And I do have affiliate links in the video description as well. So if you click on any of those links from the description, it kicks you over to Amazon, and click on anything and buy it. I'm going to get a small commission, and that's going to help the channel out immensely. And if you'd like to continue developing your watercolor skills, I have 2 digital products on Gumroad that'll help take you from beginner to intermediate proficiency. If you buy those, they'll help get you there. And if you think I'm doing anything on this channel providing these free drawing and watercolor demos, please head over to Patreon and give me a $5 a month membership. That helps immensely, and I really do appreciate all the support you can give me. All these things help out the channel and keep me going. So thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in the next demo.